Okay, Chair, can confirm that we're now live on YouTube. Over to you.
Right, good evening, colleagues and officers, and this is our first meeting of 2021. Can I begin by wishing you all, and all those listening on YouTube, a very happy new year. We've probably had a little bit of a rocky start, but things can only get better. And we have about 95, 96 days until the 1st of April, so there is no time to lose in terms of getting our new council up and ready for the 1st of April. Apologies for any attendance. Have you got any, Paul?
I do, Chair. I have apologies from officers being Martin Henry and Audra Statham.
Okay. Any notifications to address the meeting?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Any members' declarations of interest? Adam?
Yes, Chairman. I'd just like to advise that when it comes to item 11, my wife is self-employed, and we're talking about the minimum income for the self-employed. However, I regard that interest as de minimis and not of any material consideration. I just wanted to declare the interest anyway.
Any other resident in a similar position? It's kind of a general thing. It's the same when we're talking about council tax. We don't need to declare interest because we're all council taxpayers. That's been sorted. So the minutes of the last meeting were circulated. They do run to quite a number of pages. So on the bigger pack, they start on page 5, 6 and 7, 8 and 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13. 14 and 15. Are there any comments or factual accuracy on the minutes?
Nope.
Are we agreed then that these could be approved as a true record?
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you. Announcements. As I said, I don't have any specific announcements. Thank you. As we all know, well, we've started another lockdown. I think we legally start the lockdown midnight tonight or whenever. I think certainly, having spoken to my own council earlier today, we didn't have to go through that phase that we all had in March. Oh heck, how are we going to cope with this? What are we going to do? It was just a matter of dusting off plans and working them up. And I'm quite sure we'll carry on in this business as unusual, as I've been referring to it for quite a while now. As to what we need to do, but we will obviously need to be ready and respond should there be any issues that arise. Some of the figures that we've all seen on the data are quite worrying about the rates and the spread and the speed at which this particular new variant is taking people out, and we certainly need to be ready and able to respond to whatever. I had a call earlier today, maybe some of the rest of you were on that call, where if there was any doubt about elections, the minister was very clear that there were no plans at all to change elections, and they would still be carrying on for May. That was confirmed on a ministerial call earlier, so at least that gives a bit of clarity that we know the elections for May the 1st. There are no plans at the moment whatsoever to alter that date. It's not May the 1st, but the first Thursday in May of this year. So, Director Transformations Programme update, starting on the big pack on page 17. Jane.
Evening. Yes, so as you know, we bring you this update to every shadow exec. Just to say to you, this information is correct as at the 30th of November, and there's been a bit more of a delay because we had Christmas in between before we got to this executive in January. So what I will say is things on the programme are moving extremely fast, as you would expect in this kind of delivery phase. So whilst this was true as at the 30th of November, a lot of these things have also moved on quite a bit since then. And you'll hear about those next time.
But do you want to point out the big, if there are some big changes that you want to bring to our attention, particularly, I don't know if you've got, ambers that have gone red or reds that have gone amber or any sort of changes like that. Might just be worthwhile
Yeah,
So we're not fretting over them.
Yeah, so in the main, so the place north and west were amber at the point of when this was done, but those have moved much more towards green. And although, as you can see on the screen, it says amber, the amber concerns are a lot smaller than they were. So lots of this was around SMEs support, which is still a difficult situation given the staff requirements in terms of COVID. Obviously, we've just heard that another large-scale grants is going to have to be delivered, so that takes away capacity again from the programme, but we are finding ways of working around that and bringing in resource to deal with it, so it's less of a worry than it was. And the Place West part, there is something around training standards, but that is now all basically sorted out, so we know exactly what's happening with that, so there are no issues around that. So Place West hopefully should move towards amber towards the end of green. Finance risks around resources are still going to be there, but again, there's a good conversation around how we bring in external resource to help support that work and make sure that we have enough to be able to do. With corporate, Martin, I'll talk a bit later on some of the amendments, but in terms of the trade union negotiations, we're having good conversations with the trade unions, and we're in regular contact with them. So although that's an amber, we are working through that. Children's is just around stabilisation, because although we went to the Children's Trust on the 1st, we still have work to do on that, but that is all moving really well. Adults is a good news story, so it's moved from amber to green, which is excellent, and that is down to the dedication of both the programme team and the adults team as a whole. And ICT will be an ongoing amber, but we have a very strong team in the ICT and external support that is helping us move through those, and the rollouts of MS365 have gone really, really well, with NCC happening this weekend. Okay, so that's those. With regards to the programme governance, we moved into the Northwest split with just as much smaller joint element. That really takes place from January fully, and that's been working really well. Programme management has been realigned between myself and Lisa Hyde, who's the North Transformation Director. And what that basically means is that we have all of the programme managers leading into one or other of us for line management responsibility, but we take a joint responsibility for making sure each of the programme work streams is delivered, and we work very closely together to make sure the North and West stay aligned through this. And also with the transformation team, North and West, this is one of the areas that will be dealt with prior to vesting. We are looking at structures and consultation now, and stabilisation and aggregation of services and hosted disaggregation, and the main things that are going to be concentrated on with getting a programme together of those, and we are working with the Transformation Task and Finish group to ensure that happens. Okay, you happy for me to move on to the change managers update, or did you want to ask for a question before that, Chairman?
Let's just see, are there any questions for Gian? No? You're on a roll, Gian.
Okay, brilliant. So change managers, we've changed the format slightly this time because we wanted to give you a lot more around the impact of the things that we're doing through the change management programme. So I'm not going to run through, I'm assuming that you've had the pack and that you've seen everything that's on it. I'm not going to run through everything individually, but just to say we're trying to show at the moment the things that we're actually physically doing in terms of action, and then what impact that achieves. So for example, the BBC radio interview, wider awareness, the impact was the wider awareness of the positive transformation. So hopefully that will give members and public more assurance about the things that we're doing and the difference that they make. So that's on the first slide. Change champion activity. So change champions have been working extremely hard over the last few months. Not that they haven't done before, but this has been particularly difficult with lots of work going on in tier 1 to 3, and lots of people asking more questions as they start to realise, and we go into this period where it's not far off and it becomes a reality for staff. So we've had a winter series of gearing up, which myself and Lisa attended to answer questions. And also Teresa, as Strategic Delivery Director, attended a session where she was also asked direct questions. So we're opening it up to staff to be able to ask us questions live, sending questions beforehand if they're not comfortable doing that, but to make sure that we can answer honestly and openly with them and keep them reassured. And then lots of other stuff on there, but North and West workshops with ICT and customer contact, basically to help people familiarise with the new systems and improving understanding and gain, you know, on those big ticket systems such as ERP, Capita and Eclipse, so we can make sure that they are run well and people understand what they need to do and how they work. Then we've also as well as that, we've done a "you said, we did" thing. So basically what we're doing is taking the challenges that staff make to us or members make to us, and coming back with a response of what we've done to do an action and make impact against those. So just to give you an example, again, I'm assuming that you've read the pack, but manager engagement then could be improved was a challenge that we had into the programme. So we did a manager's toolkit and a change management framework. We've also done a lot more information sheets and various things that will come out, have gone out to staff, but we'll give you more information on those at the next shadow executive. And then again, you said the impact of tier 1 to 3 consultations that may need to lead to disengagement. So we did further analysis and engagement and with HR, and basically invited through the consultation, invited input, and also invited people to ask questions live to us. Okay, so those are the things that we've basically done. Communications and engagement, as ever, there's been a lot of work on this. So recent activity, you can see there, publishing, promoting new authority logos, which was a big thing for the unitary to move forward with that. As you know, we did a consultation and asked the public for opinions on this. So we're very pleased that that's gone live now and that the new logo is out there. All staff comms on future council structures so they could see, and big ticket item support for MS365 rollout, because for each sovereign council that's been a little bit of an upheaval as people learn to use it, but also very positive in terms of the way that people embraced it and the added value that it's giving now. And then just a couple of things, videos with Anna and Rob. So particularly Anna's been doing a blog and lots of information out, being very visual and ensuring that staff know who she is, answering questions, and we're making sure that people get to know the new management team moving forward as well. So next steps, one-stop shop online hub for future Northampton info and updates to make it easier for people to access. Lots of things on there, but ongoing support for day one branding decision-making process. So this is probably one of the biggest things I want to highlight to members. One of the biggest budget pressures we have in terms of the programme budget is around branding and rebranding, because there are an awful lot of things that people are seeing as the most important. So we have to assess which ones, and we're going through a process at the moment to assess which is the most important, how are we going to use that budget most effectively and with the best resources. And ultimately we may need to bring something back to members just to have a look at, is that the right decisions and the way that you want to work, because that will be very visual. The decisions that we make there will be very visual.
So on that one, Jane, is Jonathan's comms task and finish group getting engaged on that, you know, that in terms of setting member priorities and working out, you know, that what has to be done and what would be nice to be done and so on and so forth.
So we have
need be calling that and saying, I'm sorry, but you know, this one's going to be done over that one.
So we haven't collated all that information yet, so I'm not sure that I've had sight of it, but I can certainly ensure that it goes through that comms task and finish group to make sure that they have sight of what we're saying, you know, are the most important things and whether they agree with that, and make sure that there is member input. I'm happy to do that.
Jonathan, are you happy with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're slightly involved. We've got a meeting this week, and I think we've got branding on the agenda again. But thank you, Ian. Yeah, it would be really useful just to have a little bit of oversight. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you know, again, if you need member input, then we have a existing, you know, group sitting there that let them do it. You know, there's no need to bring it back here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's fine. If you're happy with that, then we'll do it that way. Appreciate that. Okay, and
sorry, does Danielle want to come in?
I do, but maybe after Jane has finished.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, I was just going to add one more thing on those next steps. So the day one readiness campaign is being worked. I know we're past 100 days to go, and we did do the first element on the 22nd of December to announce it internally. We've had feedback from members to make sure that we do more externally around the number of days to go. So currently a plan is being worked on that, and we'll come to members later on. Okay, and that's it if you want to from there.
Right, Danielle, your hand up.
Thank you. Forgive me, Chair, if I've picked the wrong agenda item to raise my question under. It wasn't clear to me where it would slot in. I wanted to pick up on the previous page where Jane showed us you said we said, or you said we did. in relation to the loss of expertise or the threat or the suspicion that there may be a loss of expertise within the services. Given the history of where we've come from, I take that really to heart, because I think that was part of the undoing of children's services, frankly. But I wanted to push that a little bit further, because I've shared with you in the past my concern about where Northampton, as a huge town, you know, the biggest town in Europe, fits in to transformation and transitions in terms of absolutely that, maintaining that sense of expertise that we have developed in the town around really critical issues like homelessness, like housing, like diversity of our demographic, like a whole range of things, community safety. I'm thinking as well about a report that's just been published through NN Journalism looking at right-wing extremism in the county. Northampton is obviously a focus for that. And I think, so I'm anxious all the time about, I don't want to privilege Northampton above anywhere else, but I'm mindful of the fact that we've got 230,000 population and a very, very diverse demographic. And we are on the receiving end of some really unfortunate happenings, gang activity, county lines, whatever. So we have a lot of vulnerability. And in terms of the transition to the unitary, what I'm really, really fervently hoping is that we're going to be able to carry with us a lot of the knowledge, expertise, and understanding of all those issues, because I would hate West Northants to start off at ground zero and have to do what's taken 20, 30 years for people in Northampton to learn, to do it all of a sudden really quickly. It's not going to be helpful if that's what's going to happen.
Okay, well, my immediate reaction would be, why would you want to throw away a lot of good work if good work is being done? And I'm sure we've always said we want to bring the best practice wherever it is, and if there are, and I'm sure there is plenty of good practice at Northampton which can be incorporated, that will bring good practice from right across the whole of the West. I would see little point in throwing away expertise or just doing something just because we're going to find a new way of doing it. You know, many of the issues you raise are still going to be issues, and it would actually be playing into the people who are peddling some of those concerns that you rightly express, to allow a situation to develop where they could slip through the cracks. So there's certainly no desire on my part, and I'm sure that will go from the rest of my colleagues, to just stop doing things because it happens to be done in Northampton, or to that extent happens to be done in Daventry or Towcester or Brackley, or pick your town really. You know, we want to get the best outcome for everybody right across the whole of the new authority area.
I understand that, Chair, and thank you for that. But my anxiety is I don't see it reflected anywhere. That is my anxiety.
Well,
And,
worry ye not. So, Jane, have we any more to carry on with this, or are you?
No, I'm fine with that. You can pass.
You're fine with that. Okay. So, the finance summary report is down for Audra. Audra is obviously an apology, but is there anything to add to that report?
Paul Heim was going to step in.
Oh, Paul's going to.
Yes, yeah, I'm covering for Audra as well. Yes.
All right, sorry, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. So just a brief overview of the report, really. In terms of the investment, the Future Northants budget, there's a forecast underspend of around 190,000, which relates to the timing of the shadow statutory appointments. The full details reflected in the report, obviously. In terms of benefits realisation, what the report's showing is about £1 million shortfall in the realisation of savings in 2021. That total on the outturn column under section 2 should be 13,472. But that's showing about £1 million shortfall. That is a timing issue. It relates to the implementation of some of the transformations delayed as a result of COVID, and any savings not achieved in 2021 are expected in future years. So overall, there's still a forecast 85 million total saving from the programme. I haven't got anything further to add, Chair, but happy to take questions.
Any questions on the programme finances? Don't see any. Oh, sorry, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It wasn't a question. It was just to point out the reference to the Shaw PFI programme in the NCC transformation bit, which, as I'm sure most colleagues are aware, the agreement was made and dealt with just before Christmas, which is a huge step forward that will add an awful lot of value to both North and West authorities as we move forward in that directorate. So that's a really good piece of work, albeit slightly later, as it says in the report, but really pleased to see that that happening. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think we should add our congratulations to everyone on that one, and we can end the scandal of actually paying for beds to be kept empty and then paying for a bed that was needed a second time round. So that should have great effect, and thanks to Anna and all of the team who did eventually drag that one over the line. So Danielle, another question?
Well, I wanted to comment on the Shaw thing as well, and also say thank you very much for all that really hard work. And it isn't just about saving money, is it? It's about good outcomes for people. So I'm very mindful of the fact that 2 of those homes that have now been brought back in require improvement. So I'm really, really pleased that we're at last in a position to have that as an expectation. What I really wanted to ask, though, was about the high risk of that £30 million. I understand timescales are absolutely everything, but if we're rolling this risk into our first year, we need to know what the mitigations are, surely, just in case, you know.
Which 30 billion are you referring to?
It's the gap in what we are aiming to save and what we are saving at the minute.
Paul?
Thank you, Chair. So there is a 36 million now expected to be saved in future years, and that's across the whole of Northamptonshire, both West and North, so not just for the West. Since the budget was reconfigured in June last year, I think it was, we were expecting 35 million to be achieved in future years. So it's only a 1 million slippage since then to make it 36 million. All of the West share of that is built into the budget plans that are on your agenda later as savings, and all of those savings have been reviewed and risk assessed. Obviously, a number of them are amber at the moment. Until we come out of the end of the COVID period, then it's going to continue to be challenging to achieve those. But obviously, with Jane and as she builds her team, the transformation team will be focused on delivering those transformation agendas. So I think we can have that confidence.
Thank you. Any other questions? Fine. Then we move on to the item 8, draft budget. So on the has been sent around as a separate.
Chair,
sorry.
excuse me. Sorry, can we
stick them in, Paul?
Yeah, sorry, apologies, Chair. We just need to approve that item.
Oh, apologies.
And then the next item is item 7, which is programme change requests.
Ah, indeed. Thank you. So we're noting this report, aren't we?
Correct. Yeah.
So, Cabinet colleagues, are we happy to note the report? Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you, Paul. Sorry, programme change requests. Page 37 of the larger pack. There are a number of these change requests. Who's introducing these? Is it Jane?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick introduction, then pass over.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this, just to let the members know, this is changes that have come that are different from the blueprint that was originally presented to members. So you've got the specialists in the field here to report on each one, but what we agreed with members, that we would bring any changes through here to any of the blueprint. Okay.
And the majority of these are small specialist services where it's either difficult or risky, or there are very good reasons not to split them or to host them and build up the expertise or whatever, as the reports all say. So they're all they all have their own reasons, which have been laid out. Do people want to go through them one at a time, or any questions on any individual specific ones? Phil? And then Matt?
Sorry. Oh, sugar, sorry.
All right, I'll come to Matt and then come back to you, Matt.
Yeah, it was just a comment really that I read through them, and a lot of them are in adults, and they are, as you say, Chair, small specialist teams. And I think you can't argue against the reasons given as to why we need to agree with the recommendations today. But it does serve to remind us of the sort of enormity of what we're dealing with, and the fact that we're just sort of starting in some areas to the sort of beginning of the journey, and these things need to carry on as sort of transformation and disaggregation well into the creation of the new unitary. So I'm happy to support the recommendations, Chair. I don't necessarily think we need to, unless other members want to go through them individually, but that's up to you.
Phil, have you found your page?
Sorry, yeah, on the page. Sorry, Chair. I'll drop the papers just as you called it. Just referring to the change on A10. I think this is a very important change, and I'm pleased it's being addressed. Otherwise, we would have great difficulty with our officers, highway liaison officers in the West, actually being able to work with Kia. So it is a very, very important change, and I fully endorse it. And I think it's definitely the right thing to do. So just wanted to give my support to that, but I also agree with everything that Matt said. So thank you, Chair.
Any other questions or comments on this particular one? I'm just getting to the recommendation. I think this one we do have to approve, don't we?
Yeah.
So I will move that we approve the changes requested to the blueprint as outlined in Appendix A, for the reasons to ensure a robust change management and recording processes for the blueprint for the new authority. So are we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So now we can go to item 8, the draft budget. Rebecca?
Thank you, Chair. Members will have the draft budget as a separate document. So this report represents the first draft revenue budget for 21-22 and the medium-term financial plan for the West Northamptonshire Council. It kicks off the consultation process, giving residents, local partners and other stakeholders the chance to comment on the proposed budget and provide feedback. It also goes to the Shadow Overview and Scrutiny Committee for their consideration and out to wider engagement with the Shadow Authority members. The report sets out the latest estimated funding position, budget reserve, budget pressures, key risks and the challenges influencing the development of the new council's financial plans for the next financial year, the ongoing impact of these plans, as well as an estimate of the funding and spending requirements for the medium term. In addition to the draft revenue budget, it includes the financial plans listed on page, point 1.3 on page 1 of your report. Following the 1-month consultation period, feedback will be considered. The Shadow Executive may make changes that reflect the feedback, and the draft budget will go to the West Northamptonshire Shadow Authority budget meeting on the 23rd of February this year. In this challenging time with so much uncertainty, the budget, set in the context of the health emergency and its impact on all of society and our certainties, seeks to build a safe and legal plus transition from the 4 sovereign councils to the delivery of the new West Northamptonshire blueprints. It includes the efficiencies from a review of senior management structure and builds in resources to continue the significant transformation that has already begun in the delivery of services. The current plans assume no service reductions and build on the current capital plans of the 4 authorities. It assumes a council tax increase of 1.99% for core activities and the full 3% social care precept increase. Appendix C of the report also sets out the recommendations of the Council Tax Harmonisation Task and Finish Group. After considering the 2 available options, it concluded that applying the referendum limit to the average level of current Band D rates across the authority was the most appropriate way forward. And although there's no specific recommendation in the report, the group felt that a harmonisation period of between 3 to 4 years minimised the variances between the existing council tax rates required to achieve the harmonisation. As this is the first budget created for the new council, significant due diligence has been undertaken to create the baseline figures transferring from the 4 sovereign councils. Therefore, there will be some inherent financial risk associated with the demand for services in the first year. And of course, this is augmented by the uncertain health and economic impacts of COVID in our communities. While such risks can't be mitigated through the provisional settlement, they have been mitigated through the inclusion of prudent contingency funding in these plans. Post-vesting day, officers and the executive will work together to create a 3-year corporate plan encompassing the transformation, consolidation, efficiency improvement and corporate priorities so that West Northamptonshire can deliver its ambitions to be a high-functioning, sustainable authority. So in summary, the main features of this proposed budget are that it's a balanced budget, it protects existing service levels and therefore no reductions in any service provision, it proposes efficiency savings of some 13 million, an average council tax increase of £6.20 per month for a Band D equivalent property when taken in context with the harmonisation proposals. It incorporates a prudent level of contingencies to mitigate the uncertainties of a first year of operation, and it preserves all the current capital schemes across West Northamptonshire. So in conclusion, Chair, the recommendations for the Shadow Executive are at 3.1 on page 4 of your report, and I ask the Shadow Executive Committee to note the recommendations in the report. I'm happy to take any questions, and Paul Hymes is going to be my go-to technical advisor. Thank you.
So, Paul, have you anything to add?
No, nothing to add at this stage, Chair.
Okay.
Chair,
Danielle, I see.
I wasn't
Sorry,
proposing. Sorry, Chair. I wasn't proposing to go through the report in detail because I know that executive and shadow members have received have had sight of the draft before and have had a chance to question it.
And we had a good all-member briefing prior to it going live just before Christmas, which was also quite useful, and there were a number of questions raised from a member point of view. Nonetheless, I think what we're proposing tonight, and remember this is just a draft set of proposals that we're now saying to all our key stakeholders, well, here's our first cut, what do you think? And we can, in some respects, hold fire on any finessing and comments for tonight, and allow the Shadow Authority, when we meet in February, and when we come back to this, I think at the end of the month, to bring on board any comments that we've had. So I see a number of hands going up. I'll start with Danielle, and then we can have a discussion amongst executive members. So Danielle.
Hi, I just wanted to ask the question I asked once before, and I hope I get a bit of a different answer, really. And it's about the difficulties of close down with the districts and boroughs. And we're running into capacity issues, aren't we, with a lot of interims as well as audits being delayed. Now, I was assured last time that that is not going to impact on our first year's budget. I don't see how we can present an opening balance until we really know what's happened to all those budgets with the districts and boroughs. So yes, I wanted some assurance of that. And the other question that, again, I've raised before, but I'm not happy with the answer really, is about, I understand, and I think it's brilliant actually, that we've got a balanced budget. I think it's brilliant. We're not making any service cuts. It's not enough though. For me, it's not enough. We've been through the hugest crisis imaginable with Brexit, with the pandemic. We've got a recession coming. A lot of our citizens are being thrown into poverty. Demand pressures on services is going to go through the roof. And what we haven't got built into the budget is the knowledge of what the budget should be to meet need, what it should be to meet growing pressures, and what that budget gap is. I don't feel very safe about that, because I think if we know what that gap is, then we can develop plans and policies to meet those gaps.
Thank you for that. On first point on close down arrangements, I think Paul's probably going to be better placed to give detailed technical answers, but my understanding of the situation is that we will be using our best estimates from unaudited accounts and bookkeeping, but if there are any tweaks to be made when EY eventually get round to finalising the audits, then they could be changed, but they would not necessarily be massive material sums. Is that a reasonable assumption, Paul?
Yes, Chair. I was going to make the same point, that whilst we won't know the final figures and the final audited figures for some time into 2021, possibly even into 2022, the way some of the audits have gone in recent years, but we can be fairly confident about the level of reserves that the West Northants will be inheriting, subject to the final details around the disaggregation of the county's reserves. There's not going to be huge shifts in those that are going to materially impact on the budget, certainly for 21-22, and any small shifts that there are, we can deal with during this subsequent year's budget process. So yeah, nothing material should come out of the close down process, and indeed it's also worth noting that we have included £500,000 to help to facilitate a smooth and timely close down of the accounts for 2021, both for the county and the current districts and boroughs, including potentially additional audit fees, but to make sure that we can get those sorted as quickly as possible. Thank you, Chair.
A lot of that will be to keep the in-house expertise that we currently have, so we don't incur, the teams that know the accounts that can answer the auditors' queries will still be held in place as part of that £1 million between ourselves and the North to ensure that we get that. That's my understanding. Is that yours?
It will be both using existing teams, and I think that in order to get things done as quickly as possible, bringing in some external capacity as well, I think is the proposal.
Okay.
Chairman,
Rebecca, do you want to come back on the bit about?
I was going to reassure Danielle that I think the best assumptions have been made using the available knowledge about demand. Of course, when this budget was prepared, we hadn't yet moved into lockdown Mark 3. And it is a changing background, it's just constantly changing at the moment. But we have built in some contingencies for those reserves. When you're preparing a budget, of course, you have to make assumptions and do the best you can. And I think that this budget does have that extra bit of flexibility that is going to occur, and there will undoubtedly be bumps along the way, but I am confident that this budget will be able to cope with largely whatever is thrown at us next year. And it is a new authority, but it has been developed with the expertise of existing staff. So I do believe it's a robust and safe budget. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Adam. Oh, sorry. Well, we'll take Adam and then go to Richard, although my order should be the other way around. Adam.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, just a minor request that when it comes to the council tax harmonisation and when we're consulting on that issue and when we receive future papers, I think it might be helpful to see the Band D figure, the potential increases in cash terms, as well as in percentages, because it's very easy to get distracted by discrepancies, seemingly alarming discrepancies in percentages, when actually if you translate that into pounds and pence, the discrepancies aren't necessarily all that great. So I think that would be helpful for members when they're considering their final decision. Secondly, I just wanted to commend Martin, Paul, Rebecca, and all the others who've worked on this budget. You know, for quite some time now, the aim has been to reach the 1st of April of this year at a safe and legal plus level because of everything that's been going on behind the scenes on the national stage, many of the issues that Councillor Stone herself has outlined. And to be able to reach the 1st of April this year, hopefully at safe and legal, plus undertaking serious transformation, I think is a remarkable feat. And everyone who's put their efforts into this budget should be applauded in that regard. You know, there are some accusations out there that the budget doesn't go far enough, but actually I think you have to put into context just how far we have come in delivering this draft budget, and just how remarkable it is that against the backdrop of COVID-19 and all of the intense resource pressures that have been piled upon district and county council, that we've managed to reach this stage is seriously impressive, and there will be many opportunities in the years ahead to transform services, to look again at how those services are delivered to residents across West Northamptonshire, and we mustn't lose sight of that. If we can reach April the 1st at safe and legal plus, it will be remarkable in itself, and then we can embrace the future possibilities.
Thank you, Adam. And I must support you in asking for Appendix C to be rewritten to show cash amounts as well as percentage amount. It would mean a lot more to people, I think, as well. Richard.
Thanks, Chair. Adam's absolutely totally stole my thunder. So just from me, a big thank you. You know, just a big thank you. I don't think I can add to his narrative. Very articulate and spoke as I feel as well. So thank you very much to all the financial people.
Any other cabinet colleagues? So our next process for this is to launch the consultation, and then when we get back any comments, we can incorporate those in. The consultation starts tomorrow, I think, and runs until the beginning of February.
Yes, 4 weeks,
right?
Chairman, yeah.
4 weeks. So the recommendations that I just don't want to move too quickly, but are we happy that we move to recommendations? Okay, so Rebecca, I think you've already moved the recommendations. There are probably a lot of them. Hang on. Where's the report going? Here we go. So the recommendations are set out on 2.1 to 2.3 that the shadow executive note. Oh, wait a minute.
3.1 to 3.2, Chair.
I'm on the next item.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3.1 to 3.2. I won't bother to read that because it's almost a full page, but we're recommending that we note the budget and its figures. Note the estimated tax base, which is important, at 137,374, as set out in paragraphs 8.7 to 8.9. Note our approach to fees and charges as set out in section 11. And note the provisional allocations and the planned use of the dedicated schools grant, which is almost as big as our own grant. I think it's bigger.
Okay.
And to delegate any authority to the relevant directors to make any tweaks that need to be made to it. So are we in favour of that recommendation, of those recommendations? Okay, that is agreed, thank you. And I'm sure, as Adam and Richard both said, but I do feel it's important that we do formally place on record our thanks to Martin and Paul and the whole of the internal factory that you need to put together a budget. It's not a 5-minute piece of work, and it relies on a lot of work from a lot of people. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone in saying thank you to everybody that has got involved to ensure that we got to this point.
Thank you, Chair.
So,
I'll ensure that's passed on to everyone involved.
Yeah, please do. So item 9, the draft housing revenue account. Rebecca?
Thank you, Chair. So this report sets out the draft budget for the housing revenue account and proposals for rent increases for the next financial year, as well as capital expenditure. So just as a bit of background, on vesting day, the new authority will assume responsibility for the housing revenue account, which is the ring-fenced landlord account for social housing currently owned by the Borough Council. The council must operate the budget so that it is not subsidised by council taxpayers and must too live within its means. The main sources of income for the HRA are from rents and service charges, and the main areas of expenditure include management and maintenance costs, the costs of capital, major refurbishments and depreciation. On the 1st of April 2020, so last year, the HRA had a stock of approximately, well, it had a stock of 11,426 dwellings, comprising 6,501 houses, 4,857 flats and 68 shared ownership properties. So it's a significant landlord. Approximately 100 dwellings per annum are lost through right to buy, and management of the housing stock is through an ALMO, an arm's length management organisation called Northampton Partnership Homes. This budget report sets out the national and local policy context on page 86, as well as the most recent policy initiatives by central government. It recognises some of the assumptions that have had to change due to the impacts of 2020, such as reduced capital income from fewer right to buy sales. So far this year, it's of 33 to 35 versus the 100 that they would expect. On page 88, the draft budget recommends rent increases in 21-22 of 1.5% for both social and affordable rent properties, in line with government recommendations. So Northamptonshire Partnership Homes has been working with the council on a 10-year development plan for delivering new affordable homes, including social housing, over the next 10 years. This will help address the severe shortage of affordable housing in Northampton and reduce the rate at which the council's housing stock is reducing through right to buy. So included in this budget is the HRA capital programme for 21-22, which is attached at Appendix 2, and a proposed capital programme for that financial year of 59.8 million. Some of this is to fund improvements to the existing housing stock, but 34.1 million of this is to deliver 200 new council homes in the next year for Northampton as part of that development plan. The HRA capital programme has been developed within the context of a 30-year business plan and an existing asset management plan. The capital programme has a direct impact on the revenue position of the HRA, and the revenue impact has been factored into the budget for 21-22. So, Chair, I would like to recommend that the Executive note the recommendations on page 85 of our papers, and that the draft HRA budget then goes out to public consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, do you have anything to add to that before we go?
No, nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So first hand I see is Danielle, and then we can have a discussion with cabinet colleagues. Danielle.
Lovely, thank you so much. I wanted to congratulate Northampton Borough Council and NPH for the amazing work they've been doing, and our present CEO actually, in addressing the housing crisis in Northampton. It has been extraordinary, and I really fervently hope that the plans that are drawn up for continuing that programme are going to go forward into the West Northants Authority. I wanted to raise two things with you, just to highlight how important it is. In my borough division of Castle, we have a huge number of families living in socially overcrowded conditions. So there is no statutory obligation for a housing authority to rehouse them. We also have families living in statutorily overcrowded conditions. If I just give you one example of a case that I'm dealing with at the moment, but actually I've got 4 of these such cases, but one is a family, remember it's lockdown, with 4 boys under 8 living in a 1-bedroom flat. The urgent housing need in Northampton alone, let alone the rest of West Northampton, is really extreme, it seems to me. And we need to be doing everything that we can to make sure that people live a quality of life. I couldn't be more delighted with the house building programme, but it seems to me that if we can, we need to go further, and we need to, particularly because of COVID, you know, it's thrown into relief how extremely difficult it is. Who in the world could cope with having 4 boys, 4 children in a 1-bedroom flat during lockdown when they're not allowed to go to school? It is really awful, and I'm dealing with 4 of those cases at the minute. And you know, I think we need to have a map really of what the housing need is, and that must include social overcrowding so that we can address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to reassure Councillor Stone that it is the plan that the ambitious plans of the Northampton Borough Housing do continue into the new authority, and which is what this preparing this budget is all about, and presenting this budget.
Yeah, and I think we're planning on spending, if you look on the medium-term financial forecast for the HRA, was a capital spend of about £1 million a week. It's running at around that sort of level, 300 odd houses. So I think we're doing what we can, given the background and that we have. Lizzie.
Yeah, I just wanted to first of all say to Daniel, I mean, there's 1,200 council homes planned for the next 5 years, which is obviously incredible. And, you know, Rome wasn't built in a good day. And I get your point about the overcrowding, and you've got these 4 cases. I'd like to draw everybody's attention to 3.2.7 on page 87. About the Housing and Planning Bill 2016, which made provision for the charging of high-income social tenants. Bearing in mind what Daniel has just said, I wonder, I don't know, but maybe George and Jonathan and Phil might be able to enlighten us as though whether you have any tenants that are over £60,000 income that are basically, I guess, making hay while the sun shines on the council housing side. So so that was the first part. And are we intending to change this policy so that it is in writing that anybody over £60,000 has to pay more for their tenancy? Thank you.
Lizzie nominated a load of people to answer that one. George?
It would be marginal. In my experience, I work a lot with council tenants.
You're not
it
George.
Would be marginal.
Yeah, George.
I think I need to take that question away. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. You know, we've got 11,500 council homes, so I would need to talk to colleagues at MPH, but more than happy to provide an update, and that's included in the minutes, Chair.
Yeah.
Just on that
sounds
point,
like a
George.
technical question for the MPH.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, Lizzie.
Just to table should we not have as a common decency that people that need housing get it, and those that don't need, on 60k plus, are not getting it, because we have such a short supply, and it's going to take a while for this pipeline to get through. So this at the moment isn't in policy for the county council, the borough council, should I say, and should it not be in policy that we have this as a ceiling of income? I remember down in South Wales, there was a councillor that actually was on, I think he was on an £80,000 income, and he had a council house for 30 years on a pittance rent. That can't be right.
I think if I may, Ian, if I may comment on that, I take the apparent injustice that might appear in that. I think we can be pretty certain of a number of things. One, there's not a high incidence of that. George has undertaken to do a proper look. It's not something that's currently been on our radar. The second thing I can absolutely assure you on it, it's not easy for anybody to get a council house in Northampton. That's the honest truth. We have a waiting list of 3,500 people. So if people want to talk about those who don't deserve, and et cetera, it's just not happening. The bidding system in which you enter your details and get priority frequently disappoints very, very worthy people, and they come to their local councillors for support, and you know that it would be absolutely wonderful to find a home for them, and we often can't, so there's no doubt about that. But just quickly add something on top of what Councillor Stone said there, which is about these plans. And these plans are great. They're absolutely fantastic. A tremendous success of Northampton Partnership Homes. But actually, the number of houses we build is every bit as about the council will as it is about anything else. So it is important we have that collective commitment. The Borough Council is building, as you see, many houses, but in 20 years, it built about 8. And that has been partly about a will, a cross-party unified will to do it. So the assurance from me, in so much as I'm involved, Danielle, and I hope to everybody here, is we'll keep that will up, because it is such a vital thing. Thank you very much.
Can I also make the point that following the establishment of the West Unitary, the geography of Northampton Partnership Homes can increase to the boundaries of the new West Authority. So it will offer new opportunities to cater for the need in due course in our other towns and villages throughout West Northamptonshire. So more to come, I think.
Yeah, I think there are good opportunities in that regard. And the recent change in the law to allow you also to borrow against HRA rents and things like that are now beginning to bear fruit. You know, I know people campaigned for that for a long time, and this government eventually made the change. So it's good to see that, and you can see it in our figures. You know, as £1 million a week for the next 5 years, more or less. I know it goes up 50 to 40 and that, but it's roughly at that kind of figure that we'd be spending on council house provision, which isn't too bad for a new authority. And I'm sure our colleagues at Northampton Partnership Homes also need to be thanked for their efforts. Sorry, Lizzie, you want to come back in?
Absolutely.
No, I'm just going to say, I think there's been tremendous work done in the borough, first and foremost, to get to the stage and put this into the budget, and the whole growth element, 1,200 houses. That's absolutely amazing, and I think you should be commended for that. Quick question, and it sounds like I've got to be in my bonnet about this, and I really haven't. But I can't help but say it. Is there a system in place then in the borough that when somebody has suddenly a windfall and they're no longer on £20,000 per annum, they suddenly go up to 80,000? Is there a system in place where they have to report that increase in income to you?
Can you just add this to the list, Jonathan, or sorry, George,
to
what the policy?
Yeah,
this all sounds like policy and procedure things for MPH, of which I don't know, and I think if anyone was to speculate, we're going to end up getting the wrong answer. So let's find out the facts, and we can maybe have a separate member briefing.
I'm pretty certain that one's self-regulating. If anybody wins the lottery, I think there's a jolly good chance they'll move out their council house. But we will do a more accurate answer.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I don't see any other hands going up on this one. So we have, let me just find these recommendations again. I had them earlier. They were the ones I wanted to do at the previous item. So recommendations are on page 85, 2.1 to 2.3. that the Shadow Executive note the draft HRA budget, including the charges and rents as detailed in appendices 1 to 4. The Shadow Executive note the HRA capital programme and the financing as detailed in Appendix 2, and the Shadow Executive note the total fees proposed for NPH in Appendix 3 to deliver those services that are within scope, and they're quite significant, so it is useful that we do note all of that. So are we agreed?
Yeah.
Any against? No, so we are agreed on that. So thank you for that. We will move on to item 10, harmonisation of council tax discounts and premiums. Rebecca, are you going to do this?
I am indeed, Chair. Thank you. So this is the harmonisation of council tax discounts, which applies to property, not to the householders, but to the property and the premiums for the new West Northamptonshire Council. So currently there are some variances in the council tax discounts and premiums that are charged across the existing sovereign authorities, and these do need to be harmonised on vesting day. The harmonisation of council tax task and finish group looked at the various variances in play, which are set out on page 102 and 103. And this paper reflects their recommendations on page 101.2. So the number of properties affected across West Northamptonshire is not large. I think it comes to 198 as referenced in the report. And the effect on the budget is fairly minimal. It's a 144,000 benefit to the council if you agree these council tax harmonisation. So I'm just going to leave it there, Chair, and Belinda Green is here to help us if there are any particular technical questions that I can't answer. So if we can note the recommendations in this case. Thank you.
Belinda, have you anything to add?
No, thank you, Chair.
Colleagues, anything to add to this? Okay, so the recommendations have been moved by Rebecca on page 101. Are we happy to, we are being asked to approve the following council tax discounts and premiums. So are we happy to approve those recommendations? Any against? They are approved, thank you. Item 11, council tax reduction scheme, consultation feedback. Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
I haven't heard from you for a while.
I might need a glass of water in a minute. This is the council tax reduction scheme, and these are the consultation responses to the recommendations of the council tax reduction harmonisation task and finish group, as set out in this report. The scheme set out before you applies to working age households only, as pensioner households have a scheme that's prescribed by statute. So we don't have any influence over that scheme. It's a requirement that CTRS is harmonised in year 1 unless it's technically not possible to do so. The West Shadow Authority have explored this aspect extensively with MHCLG, but we've not been able to resolve it at this stage. So it does have to be harmonised, unlike council tax, on vesting day. The consultation was advertised extensively to the public, to relevant stakeholders, and I think the executive will be pleased to hear that every household currently in receipt of LCTRS was written to inform them of this consultation. In statistical terms, I'm advised that it was a good response rate and evenly spread across the sovereign authorities. In response to proposal 1, the minimum level of contribution of 26%, there was an equal split between those who strongly agreed and disagreed of exactly 43.2%. 43.27% each, and those who neither agreed or disagreed or who didn't feel strongly, making up the balance of 13.46%. Proposals 2, 3, 4 and 5 had more in favour than against, and I'll ask Belinda to comment on those. So I'm not an expert in consultation responses or statistics, so Belinda, I think, will be able to answer any particular questions on makeup of responses and how responses are to be read. But I am asking the Shadow Executive to note the responses at this time. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think it's also important to note that decision on this will be taken at the end of the month, so it might be useful for us to have a good, thorough read through all of these decisions without rushing into something on this one. Because I did notice that a lot of those, was 30-40 pages landed yesterday, Monday. So it would be useful to check them out. I certainly noticed there were a number of points through them where people were making things with suggestions which are fine as they stand, but are just not feasible in terms of either the legality or their practicality. You know, or you come up against other issues. People, you know, some misunderstandings, and perfectly understandable that they are misunderstandings around pensioners and people who would not be affected by this, but you could see those in the consultation responses. Nonetheless, Belinda, have you anything to add or want to give any insight into?
I don't think so, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions, though, that you may have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Danielle, start the ball rolling with a question, I'm sure.
Lots a bunch of questions. Well, one question, I want to know why care leavers haven't been taken out of the council tax system. It's something that we've been raising at the county for a long time, and I know cross-party colleagues have been raising it in the districts of boroughs, and we've always been told, wait for unitary. We'll be able to do that when we have a unitary. Care leavers should not be subject to council tax. I can tell you horror stories about the impact that's had on some of the young people I know. And in lots of local authorities, they don't have to pay council tax until they reach the age of 25, which I think is fair. We're talking about very small numbers of people here. It's not going to damage the budgets, and I think it's the right thing to do. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to is the absolute discriminatory nature of proposal 4. It's a scheme that the government brought in where they're capping benefit for children, for families with after their second child. So if you have a third, fourth or fifth child, you don't get any benefit for those children. I hope all those children in the fullness of time become our doctors, teachers and nurses, you know, because we have an aging demographic and we absolutely should not be discriminating against third and subsequent children. It's absolutely iniquitous. And in the present day, when we know families are being so hard hit and are being plunged into poverty, we should not be doing anything. You know, I really strongly feel we should have an anti-poverty lens through which we develop all our practice and all our policies. This is something, it'll make a contribution to forcing people into poverty, and I think we should not be doing it.
Okay, any other questions, queries or comments? I'm sure, Danielle, you can feed all of these things in now as we consult on these issues in the budget. On the one for care leavers, can I ask Anna, can you find us out the cost that would be involved? Because I did actually think we had an intention to try and look to see with the relief that we could do, whether it's built into the budget or whether it's not practical at this stage, but it's something that we can, I see Kathy's on the line, even better. Kathy will probably be able to tell us. Well, in fact, maybe not. No, I don't mind if you want to come back to us on this one, Kathy.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I guess it would be calculating how many at this point in time and future requests and working that out, but I'm sure Anna has further things to say.
Yeah, but we'll have a handle of the number of people leaving care and in the district and each year, and been able to work out what, you know, how you would look at a scheme if we want to consider that. We have until the end of February to actually make a firm decision, but we'll be coming back to some of these proposals by the end of this month. So we can do it then. Richard Ogre, I'll get you in first this time, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With regard to care leavers, if surely any support we give should be with regard means tested on the ability to pay, not from where we come from socially. So if a care leaver is in financial difficulty, of course we support them. Anyone in financial difficulty, we should be, but just a carte blanche, it may be a little bit insulting to them, especially if they are able to pay their way in life. So I'm just a bit cautious about group identity here when individuals may be in circumstances which they can, but of course if people are in dire need and financial difficulty, the first person would be put my hand in my pocket to support them.
Chair, can I just say that very middle class families with very middle class students at very middle class universities do not pay, their students do not pay council tax.
That wasn't my point. My point was about the ability to pay. It's the ability to pay and the support. We of course we gather taxes to pay for services for the vulnerable and the needy and to keep our communities going. And pay, I believe we should pay. But obviously those people that need support should be getting it. That was the point I was making.
Thank you. Matt.
I was just going to support the action you've put in place there, Ian. I think if we can, we should support care leavers. Obviously, there needs to be a bit of a debate into how far and how much, but the premise is worthy at looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought we were looking at. I'm sure I recall a discussion I had with Martin, but around that, nonetheless. We'll see what we can do. Any other questions on this? I think as we need to sort of consider this and come back to it. We have to make a decision on it at the end of the month. So I'm not sure what the recommendations are. Members are asked to provide a steer. Can we defer that and just note the contents of the report, and then we can come back to this by the end of the month when we're going to have to make a decision on it. You know, I think as well, which maybe wasn't quite as clear as it probably could have been, which I'm sure Danielle will welcome, is the fact that there were more people winning under this proposal because they'll be paying less in terms of their contribution being reduced from 70% to 66% would be quite welcome. They got that wrong. Anyway, it's coming down from 31 to 26 in terms of the contribution they've been asked to make. So, and there are more people in that bracket than there are, shall we say, on the losers that might be elsewhere. So I think overall we've managed to do something to end up with a proposal at the moment. Would have a scheme that could give you more winners than losers across the whole of the West, which, again, given the circumstances we're in, I don't think is something for which we can be criticised, and we should rightly claim some credit and point that out. I know it's always easy to pick on the people who might be saying, oh, well, we're going to be asked to pay a lot more, but there's an awful lot more people who are going to be asked to pay less or no more. Belinda, do you want to add anything else before we wrap this one up?
No, thank you, Chair. But just to pick up on the point of the care leavers premium, that is something that we're working on currently with our colleagues in the Children's Trust. So we will be bringing something back to you very shortly. Thank you.
I thought I wasn't dreaming when I said I'd heard that before. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, colleagues, are we happy to note the report? So, thank you. So we will now move to item 12, assets, capital schemes and reserves notification. Who's introducing this? I see Martin's down as the officer. Martin Cox, that is down as the officer.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Which member colleagues are? Do you want to tear on, Martin? Go. You're on a roll.
Yeah, I'll give a brief introduction. It is evening, everyone. It is only an update to, and it sounds quite grand in terms of assets, capital scheme and reserves. But this is a process which all the sovereign councils adopted earlier this year to make sure that any longer term decisions that affect West Northamptonshire came via this shadow executive. And over the last couple of months, there's been 3 minor changes, but following due process, we've brought them here to ensure that the process is updated and you're aware of those and they're formally on the record. The 3 things that have changed are in 421 and 422 and 23. The first one is about the people-related decisions, which were back in May exempt for each sovereign councils. We now have what we call a protocol in place to make sure we do not make any long-term recruitment decisions or employment decisions or either financial ones that impact our new council going forward. So we have stepped that one up, and members would have seen that protocol in place, and all the chief execs have endorsed and obviously following that. The second one, 422, is just an update. We discussed that the protocol that we're talking about here had a level of 100,000 in terms of decisions, but there's been a view that in the last couple of months that any decisions related to the leasing of assets and the provision of licenses around property effectively, whatever the financial level, should come to this shadow executive. And the last one is just to reflect the fact that we don't have interim chief execs any further, that we have permanent ones. So it's just here to note, obviously members will recall the discussions and the points, but it's just to make sure we've got an accurate process going forward. But essentially it's a positive one to make sure there are no decisions made without the knowledge agreement of the shadow executive.
Any comments? No. So are we noting this one or approving it? Our recommendation to approve the changes to the assets process as set out. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Any against? That is approved. So item 13, matters referred, there are none. Item 14, exempt items, there are none. And item 15, urgent items, there have been none that I am being notified of. So thank you all for your time. At 19 minutes past 7, I will close the meeting and we'll meet again towards the end of the month, 25th, 26th, isn't it?
26th of January, Chair.
Yeah, the next executive. So